What is up, everybody? This is Jay, aka MultimediaJay. How's that for something that's really basic and to the point and downright metal? Ethan Meixel. The only time I've ever actually seen any metal type stuff on the YTAL. There's some other stuff probably that I could check out, but Ethan Meixel is the OG. As far as I'm concerned, he's the YTAL metal GOAT, as far as I'm concerned. Greatest of all time. So it'd be interesting if there were ever some more heavier tracks like that. I mostly heard rock type stuff, though. There's not much in terms of metal and stuff. Is our sound working okay? If there were ever some more heavy... That's good. That's good. Okay. 6:40 at the Geek House. This is definitely what would be considered an early stream on this channel. But I wanted to come on here and talk about this before this topic got any older than it absolutely needs to. And, yeah. It's, you're doing a Pandemi-Rant to close out the year? What the heck, Jay? Yes, I'm doing a Pandemi-Rant to close out the year. It's New Year's Eve. Who's going to care about anything on the internet on New Year's Eve? Unless they're one of the smart people not taking part in the super spreader event here in the Northeast. That's going to be a kickoff for the next major global COVID wave. Who's going to be doing that? It's New Year's Eve. It's New Year's Eve. It's already showing up in the numbers that Twitch is taking a hit already, but not as much as they did on Christmas. Switch off to browser mode. Here's the Selenium numbers. You can see the dent that New Year's is putting in the viewership of what would normally be the peak hours. You can see Christmas back there as well, so it's better than Christmas. That's because New Year's Eve is a holiday, and New Year's is a holiday that sweeps over the globe, with most of the partying and stuff going on right around the time the bell hits midnight in the various time zones around the world. So not quite the same as Christmas, where you plan out a day of fun and presents and eating a lot of stuff and things along those lines. But New Year's definitely puts a dent in things. So, and it's if you're anywhere near where I am, you're either getting ready to go out and have fun if you're gonna do that, which I don't think you should, and or you're already out as it is. So, and if you're in other parts of the world, like say over in Europe right now, you're probably getting ready for the ball to drop. And then over in Asia and stuff, it's actually the next day. So welcome to the future. Yeah, we'll be catching up soon. But the other reason why I'm doing this early, there's a couple other reasons why I'm doing an early stream to go over this COVID crap. XBB 1.5 is the next big one. It's the next Omicron. People think that I'm a paranoid old geezer for talking about this, but it's going to lead to some really sucky start to 2023 in my neck of the woods. I can tell you that much. Here in the Northeast, everybody's been lulled to sleep. So you have a bunch of lemmings on their way to a very terrible start to the new year. So I hope they party good and hard tonight because, well, it's going to get bad. You know, usually with this tradition that I do with the Christmas tree, all the decorations, the bah humbug hat and the Christmas stuff stays up throughout the holiday, the religious observance of Christmastide. It goes away at the Feast of the Epiphany at the beginning of January, but the tree stays up without decorations because it's a fiber optic tree until spring. Because of the long gray stretch of suck that is the second half of a New England winter, January, February, and sometimes March. This is where we can get snowstorms. It's just you got all the cold, all the snow, all the annoying stuff, all the winter weather, and all the problems that come with it, but you don't have any of the pretty lights, no Santa Claus. It's like the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where the witch cursed the lands to be always winter but never Christmas. So that's, you know, one of the criticisms of Christmas is people, oh, you're just having a nice, bright, cheery holiday to brighten up the darkest time of the year because it's the winter solstice. Yeah, why not? This part of the year sucks. You can't go to the beach. You got to worry about your pipes freezing, so you have to run the heat, as opposed to, you know, you could go without air conditioning if you had the right setup in the summertime, if you could get used to the humidity and it didn't get too wild. But it doesn't make your pipes burst or anything like that, at least, unlike in the winter. So, yeah, it's stupid. The sun goes down, like, almost immediately. So it's like... night shift is literally completely in the dark. It sucks. Of course, if you're from Australia and everything's reversed, it's a different story altogether. But here in New England, it's, yeah. Well, this crap that's going on right now, is going to make it even more so. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So with everything coming up with New Year's Eve and everything, I decided let's talk about this as we head into the evening. There could also be people blowing off fireworks and other crap as well. But I want to spend the rest of the night until the ball drops editing videos, getting that tech video finished up that's been going on since October, and probably thoroughly making fun of myself for getting in over my head like this, because I've absolutely gotten in over my head. There's extra complexity to this video because of the multiple video sources that I'm using. It's not going to be easy to put together, and I don't even know if I'll have it done for New Year's. But we have New Year's night off tomorrow, so I might do some more work to finish off the holiday weekend, but I got in over my head on this. I remember I did this way back when I first started YouTubing in 2006, where I had these big ideas for a video, and those big ideas made it so that I didn't upload for almost a month. Well, I've outdone myself with getting hammered by COVID and getting hammered by my job and getting hammered by everything else, wanting to watch streamers, things like that. It's just been, well, you'd think I'd have learned this lesson sometime in the last 15 plus years. Don't get in over your head. Don't bite off more than you could chew. But if you're in a situation like mine where this is one of the few ways you get to have fun in life, why not? All right, let's talk about this XBB 1.5. The reason why I am staying home, and I'm going to annoy some people at work next week because I'm going to take matters into my own hands with mitigation, the complete non-existent mitigation. So XBB 1.5 is the descendant of XBB, which was one of the variants in the BQ generation. It ripped up Singapore last summer and became known for immune evasiveness, knocking out monoclonal antibodies from treatment options, as well as being extremely transmissible. It came to America and mutated in New York. And the monster that came out of our 8 million people strong major metropolitan area of New York City, well, there's a lot of international travel and business and stuff. This thing is probably going to find its way all around the world, especially with China having decided to move away from zero COVID very, very recently and stuff along those lines. Unfortunately, some folks studying sequences of COVID cases in China right now have already caught some XBB 1.5s in the Shanghai area. So it's already in the country, and it's going to get ugly. Also, the United States has been turning heads, and people are freaking out on the internet because of travel restrictions for people coming back from China. Here's the thing with that. It's not explicitly targeting Chinese people. It's anybody coming over from there, which makes perfect sense. If you're somewhere where there's a lot of COVID going around like that, and China has lots of India-style problems now that they're backing off from zero COVID. If you're coming back from a mess, test before coming back to make sure you didn't bring something back with you. That's the important part. It's for travelers from China, not necessarily Chinese people. If I flew to China right now, I'd have to test to come back to my country. So it's a sort of thing. It's not like, say, a travel ban or closing the border or not allowing flights in from China, which usually just get bypassed anyways. People will just come in from Japan or something. They'll fly to Japan first and go to China. So, I mean, this is not those counterproductive, angry, overly nationalistic moves like what would have happened during the Trump years. But the thing is, too, nationalism is part of the reason why China has the problems that it has. As the whole element of national pride with Xi Jinping and his folks in the CCP is part of the reason why they don't have any mRNA. They didn't want to import mRNA. Maybe they're working on their own mRNA technology. Who knows? But the COVID vaccines that are in use from China, you can check the Gavi Global Vaccine Alliance. I should probably load into my pages here. They're inactivated virus and viral vector vaccines, older technology. So let me just go to gavi.org. Oops, I typed it wrong. All right, Global Vaccine Alliance. I forgot the www. Let me just see. Investing, immunization. So the Global Vaccine Alliance is for everything. I want to see the COVID-19 dashboard. I want to load that in. Let's see here. Learn more about vaccines. Yeah. Frequently asked questions. Okay, let me just look for COVID-19 vaccine race Gavi, because it's called the global vaccine race. Oh, okay. All right, there's the link straight to it. The dashboard that shows everything that's in use. A dashboard that shows everything that's in use. Let's make this much, much, much bigger and put it on the screen. Head on over to browser mode once again. This is going to come in handy here. Oh, so from Gavi.org. Do you accept cookies? Shut up already and show me the stuff. All right, let's just put this back on screen here. Wow. So this is in use. This is everything that's in use worldwide. Stuff that's officially been cleared. And you can see the technologies that are in play here. There's mRNA. There's mRNA in the United States. Also technically Europe, because BioNTech is actually a German company. So Pfizer, BioNTech, they teamed up for that sort of stuff. Let's see here. I don't follow them too much because I mostly follow Moderna. Oh, yeah, they just linked it up with America. I don't know. Either way, there's protein subunit Novavax. So Novavax protein subunit, the new one that just got recently approved as a booster. I'd like to see it made available for a primary series for people that are nervous about mRNA. So they have another option besides Johnson & Johnson Janssen. So let's see here. Here's one from Iran. It's an inactivated vaccine, so with an inactivated virus, the more old-fashioned type that you and I might remember growing up. Oh yeah, they kill the virus and then they kill the virus and then they make a vaccine out of the dead virus. Yeah, weakened virus and dead virus vaccines. That's how I remember those. A viral vector, same as Johnson & Johnson from AstraZeneca over in the UK. They've gone to a couple countries and stuff like that. Pfizer is mRNA. Moderna is mRNA, the one I've gotten everything from. Janssen was viral vector. Gamaleya in Russia. Is this the Sputnik shot? I know the Sputnik shot is viral vector, but this might be it. But I think this is it. Oh yeah, Sputnik 5, yeah, or Sputnik V if you don't read Roman numerals properly. So yeah, Russia has a viral vector and a protein subunit, and Chumakov Federal Scientific Center inactivated virus. So these are the older style, dead virus, teach your body how to fight the live virus ones. Then you get to India, and this is important when you're talking about China, because China is in the same position now with things going all over the place as India was when the Delta variant popped up. So they have more people than us, higher population densities in their built-up areas, and probably elsewhere too, with over 1 billion people in India. They have more people than us, older vaccine technology, and therefore, because it's not mRNA and it's older, the logistics are slower. So they have more people, but it would be slower for their homegrown industry to develop enough vaccines to vaccinate such a gigantic country. So of course they had problems with what eventually became the Delta variant. China is in that position now. China is more populous than India is, and they have their own internal issues. Sinovac, inactivated vaccine. CanSino Biologics, viral vector. That's all right. Beijing Institute of Biological Products, inactivated vaccine. Wuhan Institute of Biological Products, inactivated vaccine. Older Shenzhen Kangtai Biological, inactivated vaccine. Chinese Academy of Medical Sciences, inactivated vaccine. Anhui Zhifei Longcom Biopharmaceutical, protein subunit vaccine. I recognize Anhui because that's probably saying it. I'm probably anglicizing the hell out of the name, aren't I? I don't know how Chinese names are pronounced all that well, so I hope I'm not anglicizing it too much. I recognize that city, though. That city in China is actually where my Chinese KF-94s came from. I buy all Korean ones nowadays, but I took a look at one of the Chinese ones. They might be good for like dust masks and stuff, and maybe an occasional trip to Walmart when we don't have a huge variant surging like we do right now. But I'm sticking with the Korean KF-94s because China has its own standard of masks, KN95. There's really not much of a reason why they would need to manufacture KF-94s when they have their own standard they could work on instead. So I'm a bit suspicious of the ones I bought. Let's see, Research Institute for Biologics. This is Kazakhstan, inactivated vaccine. But the thing with China, And the reason why I support the cautionary measures with them in case the CCP misses a new variant that pops up in their country is because it's India 2.0. It's India 2.0 with when the Delta variant popped up. As a matter of nationalism and national pride, they weren't all that open to importing our mRNA technology. So their homegrown vaccines are older technologies. And I don't know how the Xi Jinping administration let this happen. There was a very, very, very critical soundbite by the CEOs. I think was it Sinovac? It was one of those companies. CEOs from Chinese companies that manufacture these things mentioned that the effectiveness was less than their Western counterparts. And they were working on things like vaccine cocktails to try and boost the effectiveness against some of the earlier variants. So you combine all of that together, the shots are older technology. They weren't as effective as ours were. And they also, interestingly enough, despite China being what it is, as a one-party rule country like that, despite China being what it is under Xi Jinping, there's actually vaccine hesitancy among vulnerable populations in China. So this was basically the ticking time bomb for what was going to happen whenever China had to abandon zero COVID. And we've seen smaller versions of this. Taiwan things went nuts after they moved away from zero COVID. As the virus started making the rounds, and any deficiencies with their vaccination, the vaccinations and the rollouts started to be seen, and other stuff. Wasn't as much of a thing here in America because we had mRNA, and we did a great job with the rollout, vaccinating our vulnerables first, and then others as well, turning COVID largely into a political issue, and it has killed twice as many Republicans as Democrats. So, well, ideas have consequences. So I care about the ideas people believe because they act on them. And we're seeing that in the United States with what has happened with the unvaccinated getting clobbered, even still to this day. With less of them, they tend to get clobbered with more serious outcomes per 100,000 people. You know what? With how immune evasive XBB 1.5 is, they're about to get clobbered again. So China, the situation in China is why I support the travel restriction. We really need to, I am open to the idea. I'm giving the CCP the benefit of the doubt that some people, they're going to hide a new variant. Let's give the Chinese a chance here. I mean, this virus affects trade wherever it goes. So there's money on the line everywhere in the world where this thing's going around. Nobody likes to talk about the economic side of COVID or that supply chain disruptions lead to things like inflation and stuff. They'd rather just blame their political opponents. But the definition of inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. You want an easy way for there to be too few goods? Disrupt some supply chains with something like a virus. Either keeping people out of work or hampering their productivity because they're trying to muscle through it. Like what's going on in the United States with people hiding their COVID cases with home tests and using OTC medications if they have a mild case to try and knock down their symptoms and get away with potentially infecting others, which is probably how I got it in November during the BQ era. So I'm recently recovered from an infection, and I have all the shots, including the not very popular bivalent booster. What I'm worried about the most is because I'm actually honest and I actually test. If I caught this week, would be forced to give up all my sick time for the entire year in January. So anything else that happened to me is going to be attendance infractions, and it's going to be, steps towards losing my job. So I may very well just quit and go to another company if I catch COVID this month. If it doesn't outright kill me or something like that, or land me in the hospital or whatever, I probably am going to end up looking for another job, because I've never been one of those people to burn all my sick time in January and be irresponsible like that. If I'm forced into that by COVID, I've given these people fair warning that I don't want this to happen. If their policies punish honest people like me, and they haven't been getting very good people, they're not getting very good people anymore. It'll be time for me to move on to a bigger company and start fresh after the wave, which is what I probably will end up doing if I catch this. So one round with the BQ era COVID was enough. You know, I don't need to be getting this just because people don't want to be responsible. But what about the asymptomatics? The asymptomatics have been the wild card all along. You focus on what you can control. And what you can control is being responsible and not being a moron who's probably out, who's partying at a New Year's party right now and is going to end up, let's see, you party tonight. The newer variants can incubate in as little as 2 days, so you're symptomatic on your first day back to work. I'm going to be very suspicious on Monday. We're getting all that overtime because it's the official holiday that the company observes the holiday then, if anybody has anything. So... all right, let's look at the rest of these while we have these on screen here. Shenzhen, Kangtai. So yeah, China, we knew this was probably going to happen because this is one of the reasons why protectionism isn't necessarily the best thing in the world. Maybe it can help with local manufacturing and other jobs. It can help with national security interests. But when you are too arrogant as a government to allow for the importing of better products that someone else found, and you end up in a situation like this, then I don't know. Is this what it's going to take to get President Xi to finally be like, oh yeah, let's take in that mRNA stuff? Because the other thing with mRNA is a lot faster to manufacture because you're not growing viruses in order to make vaccines. So that's one of the other major reasons why it's done so well here in the States, in Western Europe as well. Let's see some other companies here. Kazakhstan inactivated vaccine. This Iranian company inactivated vaccine. This is Cuba, protein subunits. 2 protein subunits out of Cuba. Medigen in Taiwan is doing a protein subunit. Another Indian company. Oh, 3rd of July. This is a new one. Zydus Cadila, is it Cadilla or Cadila? This is India, not Spanish, so I don't know how you would say that. On the 3rd of July, this company announced approval to start human phase 1/2 trials August 20. Oh, this is 2020. Phase 3 trial, emergency on 20th of August, this company received emergency authorization from the Indian government. All right, so here's it's a DNA. Is it difference between that and an RNA like Moderna? What is that? DNA. Yeah, it is specified that it's DNA. What's the technology? What the heck is a technology in a DNA vaccine versus RNA? RNA, I understand. DNA is there's something up with that. I got to figure out what that is. Then there's an Australian thing right there, developed for use in Iran or something like that, for protein subunits. But that's the use of vaccines all around the world. So it's these, and of course, if you really want to, you can dig around and see the failed candidates that didn't make it out of testing, and that's where you find out Merck had 2 failures. So the Thor pill, of course, did its thing, and stuff like that. Either way, so that's that with that. So that's kind of the backstory behind the rise of XBB 1.5 and why I support the restrictions on travel out of China. It's common sense at this point, and we're not the only country doing it. If you fly into Incheon International Airport in South Korea and you're coming in from China, you got to test negative. Same thing if you're flying into Japan. There's some other countries doing it too. It's not just a United States thing. It's not like a Trump travel ban. It's just there's a lot of crap going on in China right now. So if you come back from there, just take a test. If you come back from there, just take a test. And again, for the morons out there that might think China's the problem, we have our own homegrown problem on our hands in XBB 1.5. Which of these other tabs do I want to start with first? Close. Oh, why don't we start with the bad news? Here it is. Twitch Purple is what the CDC chose to use. Twitch Purple is what the CDC chose to use for XBB 1.5. But why don't we just back it up a bit? Here's genomic surveillance. Dr. Ding, Dr. Eric Ding, is kind of a jumpy guy. He kind of gets a little jumpy sometimes. And I think he said he was an organ transplant patient or something, so he's immunocompromised. So I think it's understandable why he would be so jumpy. I don't always go around repeating what he said, but he got this one right. Here is for the longest time, and you may see this in some of my other tweets, XBB was old XBB, this light purple one, was being shown as ballooning, which made zero sense to me because in the war of succession after BA5, XBB wasn't finding a foothold in the United States. We already had BQ1 and BQ11 dominating everything. XBB was just, it got in too late in that generation of the viruses. It tore up Singapore, where it started, made its way around Southeast Asia, but by the time it got to the United States via international travel, business, and what have you, there was already plenty of established variants. So to have XBB suddenly take off made zero sense. I was like, what's up with that? Why do we have an XBB problem? Now we find out XBB mutated in New York. 8 million strong in New York City. You know, the most populated, the most populous built-up urban area in the United States. Very much a sitting duck for diseases that spread like this. So, XBB 1.5 surfaces in New York, just like the BA.2.12.1 variant during the BA.2 era, which popped up in New York and had an edge over previous BA.2. New York, let me go to COVID Act now for this one. New York has a bit of a problem with its vaccination adoption versus New England. COVIDactnow.org. Problem with New York is the first patchwork state. New York is the first patchwork state when it comes to adoption of the vaccines compared to Massachusetts and Connecticut. Here's New York. I don't look at vaccine percent data anymore, but in turn for anything other than historical stuff. But New York, if you've been watching, has had very patchwork vaccination adoption. Now, what is it that we've been saying all throughout all of this crap? The only way to attack this aggressive mutating virus that's trying to kill us is a unified aggressive response. You do you doesn't work. Pretending that ignorance deserves a seat at the table because it's a democracy does not work. Both sides equal coverage does not work. You're either on the side of human civilization or you're on the side of the virus. I hope it's clear what side I've been on all this time. Because this thing is a threat to our way of life. The more we let it rip, the more it comes back to bite us, as we are now going to see once again with XBB 1.5. This thing is microscopic Hitler, as some people have said. You know, the democratic world united against an authoritarian threat in World War II. I pity to see what would happen if that happened again with people being the way they are. And with half the political spectrum in the United States betraying the country to side with this virus and make excuses for it and help it spread. It's absolute treason. So here's New York, patchwork state, much like Florida was a patchwork state when the Delta variant shredded Florida and killed my cousin in 2021 around Labor Day. Here's Massachusetts. Cape Cod has a data problem. No idea why. Here's Connecticut. All but one county maxed out dark blue. And here's Rhode Island. Way more consistent coverage and adoption of the vaccines. Once data error with data errors up here for vaccinated stuff. Even Maine is doing all right. There used to be data for vaccinations there. Let me go back to the national map and look at the coverage by state. There you go. Now let's look by county. So there's data issues right now with Vermont and New Hampshire, but you see Southern New England has very good adoption of the vaccine. New York, patchwork. Pennsylvania, patchwork. New Jersey, somewhat okay. Delaware, somewhat okay. Maryland, somewhat okay. But then you get out here, patchwork. Georgia is crap. Florida is patchwork. Arizona, patchwork. And they were the center of COVID activity in the country about 2 weeks ago, with the highest, even community levels on the green map. States, now it's the Northeast turn, once again, to get their ass kicked. With Southern New England, except for Rhode Island, probably because some little data doodidleys here, as well as the small size of the state, hospitalizations are driving this light up here that's turning us orange. Rhode Island does have hospitals, but there's plenty of ways you can go to the hospital in Connecticut, in Northeast or Southeast Connecticut or Massachusetts, instead of a Rhode Island hospital. So I think the small size of Rhode Island is part of why it's yellow. The other thing, too, is I think New York is yellow, even though New York City is where XBB came out of when it established critical mass in the United States. I think New York is yellow because of the sheer amount of space outside of New York City, which used to be more orange, by the way. Now it's starting to lighten up again. But don't forget, just because New York goes back to medium community levels, probably because of a drop in hospitalizations, you have so many people crammed into New York that a medium community level in New York can represent lots of cases because of the high population, because the case numbers are scaled per 100,000 residents, which is part of the reason why Western Connecticut keeps lighting up every single time a major variant pops up. Because patients go up I-95 to Yale New Haven Hospital's territory. And maybe whatever is in Fairfield County. But hospitalization data in the States, you'll notice, is in clumps because of hospital zones and stuff like that. New London County has Bacchus Hospital in Norwich. Wyndham, Tolland, and Hartford County are all one big block encompassing the north and east of the state. Litchfield, Middlesex, and New Haven. I know Yale New Haven's a thing. I don't know what the deal is in Fairfield. Maybe there's another hospital in Fairfield County not as familiar with. I know Yale New Haven. I don't know what's out by New York, but there's a lot of people out by New York and a lot of rich people too. So you go to Greenwich, Connecticut, and the panhandle of people who go and work in New York City and stuff, and they live out in the rich part of Connecticut. That's why people think you're rich if you're from Connecticut, because all the money is over there. New York City, baby. For people that don't actually want to live in New York State. So yeah, here's Connecticut. Now, here's why I've been concerned about XBB 1.5. We go back to the genomic surveillance, and we go back to this. This is HHS Region 1 New England. Kaboom! We had the war of the variants for a while as BA5 faded. It was the BQs dominating. XBB was starting to grow. Little did we realize it was XBB 1.5. And by the way, this kills the China argument as well, because look at this little sliver of purple going back to October. Little slivers of purple going back to October. Now the XBB 1.5 has been split out from the original XBB because it's big enough to be split out. And we can see this variant goes all the way back to early October in the United States. October 8th. China lifts COVID 0. China's economy reels as Beijing lifts COVID. 3 weeks ago. China could face a catastrophic surge as it lifts restrictions. China's relaxing zero COVID. That was 3 weeks ago. It's the end of December. That was the beginning of December. December 9th, 2022, nature.com. China is relaxing its zero COVID policy. So, this renders the China nonsense that people are trying to blame China for irrelevant. XBB 1.5 predates the removal of zero COVID in China. No blaming China. This is nobody's fault but our own. We yoinked the mitigations in the beginning of 2022. We yoinked the mask mandates. We claimed we would turn the dial back up if things got worse again and bring back mask mandates and other stuff with high community levels, but didn't do that in numerous major metropolitan areas, including in blue states like California. Well, that election scared the hell out of us. Oh, the midterms are coming. Oh, no. Well, now the bill is coming due for this mass negligence here in the United States. Here we are, XBB 1.5. Also on the rise in the UK and other places as well. This thing is pretty much the next generation of everything. Some people even think it should have a new Greek letter, and it should really be the pi variant. I'll let the scientists work that out. But this is New England. 75% of cases in New England sequenced for genomic testing, XBB 1.5. It ballooned up to 75%, taking off right after Thanksgiving. What do you know? Son of a gun. No masks, no mitigations. People get together on Thanksgiving. They blabber with each other in the stores as they're doing their Christmas shopping. They get together on Christmas. Kaboom! And this is before we factor in whatever happens with New Year's. Boom. War of Succession is over. XBB 1.5 is it. What's the next Omicron? XBB 1.5. Now, let's in comparison, here's China. This is not the same kind of data as from the CDC. This is some sequences that some folks ran through and constructed a map out of. We can kind of see what's going around as China has all the problems that it's having. BF7, we had that one before. BA52, we had that one before. BQ11, that was one of our dominant variants in the last wave. And XBB, the original, was already over in Asia to begin with. So these are not a lot of data. It's just people are crunching to see what's going around over there. So the problem is someone doing another data set unfortunately came up with, this is from Danielle Ficosi, MD, by the way, over there on over on Twitter, watching this data. Unfortunately, someone has already found 3 cases of XBB 1.5 in Shanghai, so it's already there. Where it goes, who knows? But it's going to be an ugly start to the year. In the meantime, here is COVID Act Now, a little fuzzy because it's a screenshot. Here's COVID Act Now for the state of Connecticut. Why do I have this? If I can just go, I got it open in another tab. I don't need the tweet. So here it is. Yeah, this is a Northeast thing. It's making its way into the Mid-Atlantic region, also made its way down to Florida and anywhere, and Atlanta and anywhere else down in the South. It's making its way into the South. It's in Texas. The bigger the Twitch purple sliver, the more XBB 1.5 is making the rounds in your various part of the country right now. So here in the Northeast, look at New England, though. HHS Region 1. New York is HHS Region 2. We wound up with, this thing began in New York City. We wound up with more XBB 1.5 than the New York region of New York and New Jersey. So this sucker's been ripping around New England. And then there's Connecticut. You might as well take a look at these numbers. Connecticut now, high community risk, masks recommended indoors, and we've got counties lighting up for high community risk level. Never mind community transmission. Why don't we load up the community transmission map? CDC. Not that it's going to make a difference anyways, because the whole state is red. CDC COVID data tracker. Community transmission levels. Oh, but the CDC provides transmission. Oh, someone slipped at the CDC and said, if you're in an area with high community transmission, wear a mask. Look, all of Connecticut is red. Most of Massachusetts, except for one county, is red. And Alabama just pieced out and has some kind of data thing going on statewide. So crack the jokes about the state of Roll Tide, the Crimson Tide, suddenly deciding to become a blue state. Like I did on Twitter. Look at all that red. Looking in Florida. Florida had lots of yellow for moderate. Now, if you follow the 2021 guidance before everything got politicized in time for the midterms, you put your mask on. If you're orange or red, you take it off if you're yellow or blue. Except maybe Alabama in this case. Yeah, whatever, Alabama. Like California. California had a lot of yellow a couple of weeks ago. Now, bam. This thing's fighting its way around. Round, round, gator, round. It gets around. Whatever. This thing sucks. There we go. Lovely start to the new year. 2023. Cue the jokes about 2023 being 2020 Part 3. And when, folks, do we have enough? There is no more midterm election. The government is heading towards the presidential election. But that's not until next year, technically, if you want to talk about this in 2023 terms. Can we get serious about stopping this thing and helping people not get killed by it? Do we need our 2nd million people to die of COVID this year? Seriously? President Biden and your entire administration that looks like the biggest bunch of pansies in the pandemic? Dr. Rochelle Walensky out for 3 weeks, isolating at home, yet mandates that you go back to work, you filthy poor peasants, after 5 days of isolation if you get COVID. Seriously. What happened to this country, man? So this is genomic surveillance, XBB, kaboom in the Northeast. We have the biggest XBB problem in the entire country, including New York, where this thing started. And here's Connecticut. Here's Connecticut, which, by the way, massive vaccination adoption. So, yeah. That's one of the things though, when the original XBB went around Singapore, they had higher vaccinations and booster rates than the United States does. So there are cases all over the place. Not so much hospitalizations and deaths. What do we have for deaths right now? Is this thing killing people? Daily deaths. Nah, not really. Sort of. Because this is the average. Look at these spikes. The big bars are getting closer together. This is daily deaths from COVID in the state of Connecticut. 3 big bars closer. Look at the gray if you can. This is the 7-day average. See, 33, 4, 11. But you're talking, well, I mean, the thing is, like on November 9th, 50 deaths from COVID in the state of Connecticut. That number matters if it was someone you loved. But let's go back to hospitalizations, which can include if they catch it in the hospital. I know that, they're hospitalized with COVID. They didn't go to hospital because of COVID. The hospitals are doing the American public's job right now. Look at this. Shoom. I wonder when XBB showed up, this XBB 1.5 showed up in the nutmeg state. Look at that. And this is the problem. Now factor out the population so we can know how much we're sucking at not getting clobbered by this thing. That's why these population adjusted numbers exist. Otherwise, our cities would always look like zombie wastelands of COVID because there's more people and more cases. But when you factor out the population, here's hospitalizations per 100,000 residents. Now, it gets colorful when the community levels roll out in early 2022. Prior to that, we just have the black line. But here's everything. Here's the issue with Connecticut. Here's the end of 2020. This is the UK alpha wave right here. The vaccine comes out and it goes to vulnerables first responders, teachers, people over 65. The rollout of the vaccine, which hits general availability in April, and people get their shots, eventually kills off the UK alpha wave. The Delta variant rips around Florida and the South during the summer, makes its way up to the Northeast in the fall. This is the Delta variant, a murmur of activity in the state of Connecticut until Omicron shows up. Gigantic spike due to heavily increased transmissibility. There's your mild variant for you. And just as quickly as it rises, it crashes. And we get down to like moderate community transmission because of all the newfound infection immunity, which is flaky. Some of it lasts longer than others. You're better off getting vaccinated. But this bowl effect, see, everything crashes end of January, April, May, about 3 months or so. I was watching these bowls in South Dakota and Florida after previous major waves, never saw them last more than 3 months as the immunity waned. Predicted it would do the same thing in Connecticut, and it did. This is BA2. This bump is BA2.12.1, the last homegrown, but the last New York variant to make the rounds. BA2 morphed into BA2.12.1 somewhere in upstate New York, made the rounds with an advantage over BA2. And then we went into the summer with BA4 and 5, and autumn with the BQs taking over. But notice the hospitalizations. We dumped the mitigations. We lulled the country to sleep on this green map that made it look like the pandemic was over. President Biden, who's been a gaffe machine for most of his political career, did the ultimate COVID gaffe, saying, the pandemic is over, but we still have a COVID problem on that 60 Minutes thing. But what the 2022 variants did is an extremely serious thing you got to look at here. One of the things I've been talking about throughout all of this Pandemi-Rant stuff is this. The government wants something different than you do. And by extension, this is what employers in the private sector needs to realize. The government wants different things than employers do. We in the private sector care about our health as individuals. And employers should care about their people's health as well, because turnover costs money. starting over and losing productivity because you have new people learning the job over and over again costs money. Yet you get this right-wing leadership in companies learning this lesson the hard way because of political crap. They're Republican managers who are eating hits to their business in the name of ideology instead of being practical and realistic and taking steps to help people not get sick. So, I picked this up very early on during the earlier variants when Governor Ned Lamont here in Connecticut would do daily updates on COVID and the pandemic. I picked up very quickly that Governor Lamont was talking about dealing with the virus in a collective manner to keep the hospitals from being overwhelmed. That had absolutely nothing to do with what you as an individual should give a darn about. You as an individual need to give a darn about not getting sick. You as an individual need to give a darn about not missing work or, as people are about to find out next week, running the risk of having to burn all your sick time in January and have no sick time left for the entire year. You want to lose your job because of that and have to go job hunting sometime in the summer because you pointed out for attendance or something? Look at that. So, the individuals should care about not getting sick. Individuals should care about not getting long COVID. Individuals should care about not setting themselves up for after effects and other complications like diabetes, heart problems. There's always been a cardiovascular side to COVID. Positional orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, where you stand up and your heart races and you get dizzy and have to sit down again. Strange feelings in your nerves, like that guy Tim Kaine, that senator, I think, from Virginia, who ironically voted against mitigations despite suffering from long COVID. Weird, he was Hillary's running mate in 2016. So, the government has always approached things differently than you should as an individual. The government wants different things than you do as an individual. Politicians trying to get reelected don't want to be responsible for the hospitals breaking and all the bad publicity that'll bring when they're trying to get votes. You as an individual should give a darn about whether you can get hospital care because the hospitals aren't overrun with COVID patients. And we're not just talking COVID here. We're talking things like, do you need a surgery? Did you have a heart attack and you need something done? You know? Do you have cancer that you're dealing with and you need to go in for surgery that is getting bumped off because the hospital can't get around to it? So now you're running the risk of your tumors spreading or something. This concerns you a lot more than it concerns the government. So it's not enough to just kowtow to the government and their collective view on public health. Your individual health matters. When the government decided to pansy out and say, you do you, when it comes to masking, that's the government, not you. That's politicians trying to get votes, not you trying to keep yourself a healthy, viable, constructive member of society who isn't stuck unable to work because of long COVID. Been saying this all along, and 2022 has been the year that illustrated this. This activity, although it adds up to more involvement with the hospitals than the freaking Delta variant, is exactly what the government wants. A steady stream of patients into the hospitals that don't threaten the capacity of the hospitals. And then we have this. And then we have this. Here's XBB 1.5. Boom. 23.8 hospitalizations per 100,000 residents, December 30th, 2022. At this dip before Alpha died, 19.9. We're into UK Alpha territory. and then there's Omicron. We've blown away the Delta variant by now. Here's this little thing on the way up from the Omicron variant about a year ago. There you go. December 30th versus December 30th under Omicron 29.5. There you go. Patients with COVID as a percentage of hospital beds. Here's Alpha. Here's Delta. Here's Omicron. Here's BA 2.12.1. Here's BA 4.5. Here's the BQs. Here's XBB. Shoom. Houston, we have liftoff. What about... Yeah, okay. What about Massachusetts? Actually, what about New York? What did New York get up to? 17.3 and then dropped off. 17.3 and then get dropped off. Remember, New York has a higher population. Lower numbers on this average can equate to more activity. And this also depends on the hospital capacity that's available, which I'm sure New York, especially New York City, has more of, although there are patients coming over to Connecticut. 23.8. But let's go to Hartford County in the Northeast block. Going up. New London County. Going up, but tapering off. Litchfield County and Yale New Haven's block. Up, up, and away. Massachusetts. Massachusetts hospitalizations. Oh, there we go. Pshoom. The average scaled to population. Pshoom. Houston, we have liftoff. Rhode Island can always send people to hospitals in other states pretty easily, so they got this here and stuff like that. But what's their hospitalizations with COVID? Oh, jumped up a little. But don't forget, you have lots of options to go to Connecticut or Massachusetts if you're up around here somewhere. Yeah, if you need a hospital bed. So, no doubt there'll probably be some Rhode Islanders coming over and people from Massachusetts will probably have some of them showing up there too because of the positioning of the state right in the middle of all these neighboring states' hospitals. So we have this. And so the next question we have to ask is why? Has this started freaking people out into getting out yet? Usually when you have this going on, people start freaking out and wanting to get their vaccines again. So maybe we'll see this start to bump up a little some more. We hit the 95% data cap for first doses. So 82% second doses, 45% booster shot. I know the bivalent booster didn't have very high uptake in the United States. So I'm curious how this all breaks down with the original booster shot and the bivalent booster. But here's your hospitalizations. So the next question is why? One of the rules in analyzing data is that numbers are synthetic and arcane if you don't know what goes into them. If you run a factory that produces 100 widgets an hour, you got to ask yourself, what goes into that 100 widgets an hour? Are we talking about, possible safety or quality issues? Is there a possible worker comp claim because somebody's working too hard to attain that 100 units an hour? What's involved in the numbers? You got to know what's in the numbers, otherwise it's just trivia. So we know that XBB 1.5 is an evolution of XBB, which was already known for being immune evasive and extremely transmissible. This is the next generation of that. I'd say it's 2 to 3 generations removed from BA5. So that quickly, the bivalent booster that had horrible uptake in the United States, people didn't get in decent amounts. Let me look at CDC deaths by vaccination status. See if that'll get me straight over there. We might as well. Vaccine effectiveness and breakthrough surveillance. Let's look at hospitalizations. Actually, no, let's look at cases and deaths. This one takes a bit of work to load. This actually does have the bivalent booster in it. The data goes up to October though, so it doesn't yet take into account. What's going on right now. This is after Omicron. If you get Omicron involved, it looks like this. So taking Omicron out as the outlier, we see this. So you can get a little closer. This is the impact of the bivalent booster. This is for deaths. How about cases? All right, there you go. But in terms of not dying, keep in mind there's far less unvaccinated than there used to be. People have never had any shots whatsoever. We'll have to see what happens with this data set. Let's go back to Connecticut. Why is this happening? So, the bivalent booster uptake was crap. So, how old is the booster shot, the monovalent booster? First of all, remember, everything monovalent, the original shots of monovalent booster, was made for the original 2020 version of the virus. The United States, Europe wanted an Omicron booster specific to Omicron. United States regulators wanted a BA5 specific booster for BA5, which is circa the summer. So, the most up-to-date shot is that bivalent booster from the United States. I guess over in Europe, they had the Omicron one first because it came out first, but then they adopted the BA5 one when we had it up and running. So maybe some folks might have gotten an extra booster from it. We'll just say, though, the most current booster level is for BA5, circa autumn of 2022. XBB 1.5 is about a generation or two removed from that, so anybody with the old shots is working on technology from 2 years ago. Of course, you want to get established first, then move your way forward into the bivalence. And don't forget, shots can be modified at any time to take into account more stuff. We could go trivalent if we have something that targets XBB 1.5, make a booster available for that. Most flu shots are quadrivalent, going after 4 strains of the flu that were supposed to take off, that were predicted to take off. Some years the scientists guessed better than others. This year was one of the good ones. So, yeah, hospitalizations have taken off. Why are they taking off? Why was this pattern suddenly broken by XBB? That's the question we have to answer. The generation removed from the original XBB and the BQs, which caused this to happen. Now suddenly we have this. We need that answer. If this needs a new Greek letter, we need to give it that Greek letter. And we need to get something available for shots in arms if another booster is required. The bureaucracy can't sit on its ass. We're in trouble. This is Connecticut. Here's the issue. The CDC is a federal agency. It's not going to get too wild about this until this is a national problem. But it's already in the Northeast. Maybe they could say, yeah, there's something going on in the Northeast. Until Washington freaks out, what are you going to do if you're in the Northeast? That's the issue. That's why I sounded the alarm on it to the folks I work with, who represent most of the human interaction that I have. Because if I get this again, the odds are it's going to be because of them. Other than Walmart, which I've upgraded to double masking in Walmart with high-quality KF94s underneath a cloth one that pushes up against my face and makes it similar to an N95, because the cloth masks that I have, as I showed off in my video, tie around the back of your head. That's the reason why I even still bother with them. It's a tighter seal to the face to tie masks to the back instead of using ear loops. And even if the ear loops break on those masks, they don't go anywhere because of the cloth mask on top. And I've been harassed at work because of that. People are like, I can't hear you. What? Like, I'm being cautious for a reason. The community transmission never dropped down to moderate, except for one time when there was a data fluke. And I quickly caught that in the data. But notice what's still green here. Cases. Cases don't look too wild now, do they? Look at that. It's the same baseline of cases we've had even during the Delta variant. Because of home tests, people's ability to hide cases. And when you have half the political spectrum taking the side of the virus and helping it spread, they're going to pretend they don't have COVID unless you force them to test. And who's going to do that? How many people have wound up in the hospital or dead because of these people? You know, if they do this with a car, they get hauled into court for involuntary manslaughter. Do it with a virus? Because you're careless and frivolous? That's one of our problems right now. Of course, well, how do you know it's so transmissible? Oh, boy. Yeah, that's something for lawyers to argue out. But during the cases, this big spike over here from BA.2.12.1. Since then, though, it's been a blah baseline. You might be tempted to think, oh, cases are low. Reported cases are low. You can try and hide cases all you want. You can pretend it's just a cold. You can pretend it's just the flu. You can pretend it's just RSV because other things are going around and give you plenty of excuses to not test for COVID. The buck stops at the hospital. The buck stops when once again, healthcare workers are doing the job of citizens in terms of being the last line of defense against this thing. And they get to have why are people getting burnt out, not wanting to be nurses? Why are hospitals having staffing shortages? Well, wouldn't you think that if you've been going through taking care of other people's stupidity for years and years like this with preventable problems, that you'd be sick of it by now? The buck stops at the hospitals. They're doing our job for us. What about percentage of beds? That's up there now. 10.9% hasn't been this high since Omicron. Higher than it was during this part of the UK alpha wave. And up around here, there was no vaccine. This is the worst this has ever been since the vaccine rolled out. So the question is why? Crappy adoption of the bivalent booster? People being lulled to sleep by a government kowtowing to them so they would vote for the Democrats during the midterms and not vote them out because, what are you going to do, vote for the Republicans? They're the ones that told you to shoot bleach up your ass. They gave you Donald Trump. Reminds me of economics, talking about monopolies. Monopolists don't have to care about their customers. What are you going to do? Vote for the other party? We're the ones that actually supported the vaccines. We don't have the conspiracy theorists. Sucks. Anyways, political bullshit aside, and I really don't care if I get demonetized. I'm telling it like it is. Nonsense aside, there you go. And of course, now we're seeing the CDC suddenly do an about face and actually mention community transmission again and actually mention wearing a mask. Yeah. Your ass is getting hauled onto the fire. Now it's time for you to actually do your job again. Public health employees. Yeah, public health. Whatever happened to that? So yeah. Crappy adoption of the bivalent booster, a public that's been lulled to sleep by, it ain't so bad, you do you, messaging. Stupids in action, mass stupidity, mass ignorance, we're so desperate for 2019, we'll get ourselves sick and killed in order to bring it back. Or crippled or disabled because we have long COVID. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. So I really want to know what's causing this. And scientists need to get on this. What caused this? Was it crappy adoption of the bivalent booster, or is there something else going on with the virus? Because it was crappy adoption of the bivalent booster, we should see some surge back here somewhere. Because the BQ variant shouldn't have done anything. Why is it this new XBB that broke this pattern in Connecticut after a year of steadily sending more people to the hospital than during the Delta variant? There's other things too. There's a possibility of problems with people's immune systems when they've been clobbered by COVID enough times, or clobbered by something else. You know, maybe they dealt with influenza or RSV or something along those lines, and then they got COVID immediately afterwards. Is that going on? There's also scientists are looking into whether multiple COVID infections damages your immune system over the long run, leaving you more vulnerable to other kinds of infections. Is that in play? We really don't know at this point. We need the answer to this question of why XBB is breaking the hospitalization trend. And we need it fast. Until then, we need to be super tenacious. This is the one to get paranoid about. This is the one to pretend it's 2020 again about. This is the one that should be the reason why you sit home and watch the ball drop on TV, especially if you got a nice, gorgeous TV for Christmas, or you got a wonderful setup and stuff like that. Oh yeah, by all means, Let the other people be the guinea pigs for how far this is going to go. Look at what happened with Omicron. And this was with mitigations still around. This was with mitigations and a recent booster in autumn of the previous year. By the way, Omicron caught people who didn't get the booster shot, and their last shots were months earlier with their primary series. So here we go again, people getting caught without a booster. Here we go again, healthcare workers, you putting up with other people's stupidity, giving you more work to do and running you into the ground with more and longer shifts, and of course putting you at risk as well. This is why, another reason why I'm not a safe space guy. I believe in calling out bad stuff on the spot, and I don't care if I make people uncomfortable or insult them. The people that are responsible for this going into its third year, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, actually its fourth year. The pandemic was most of 2020, so inclusive. We got a freaking Olympiad of COVID on our hands because of this crap. And people keep not learning. People keep being shitheads. People keep thinking that wearing a mask is the worst thing in the world versus sending kids to the hospital because crap went around. What does it even mean to be an American anymore? How free are you when you end up with long COVID? How free are you when you lose your sense of taste for a long time and it comes back scrambled? Everything tastes like sewage. Well, gee, Jay, is that the way you want to end 2022? You mean 2020 part 2? I just as soon shred the calendar with a box cutter again like I did in 2020. Here's what we're ending with. Don't forget, those numbers you just saw is before whatever's going to happen because of New Year's. Plus a few days incubation. We'll be seeing who got stung next week. You know what? It makes all the sense in the world that I'm keeping this hat out. Maybe I'll keep this hat out past Epiphany to the end of whenever this finally drops off. Maybe later in the month. But yeah, COVID again. Bah humbug. This hat totally sums up my attitude. I am sick of this crap, and I'm sick of the same people making the same mistakes over and over and over again. Yeah, humbug. I am sick of the same people making the same stupid mistakes over and over again and then thinking they're awesome because of it and getting everybody sick. No, we can't do this with a headset. They should wear some earbuds or something like some streamers do. Oh, yeah. So how's that for a rant? And there's an actual rant to this, because you know what? This got old a long time ago, but people keep doing the same stupid stuff over and over and over again, and I don't care if I call them stupid. No, this isn't 100 years ago. I'm not a psychiatrist from 100 years ago who's making fun of people with intellectual, like, learning disabilities or anything like that. It's the 2020s, not the 1920s. I'm going to call out stupidity when I see it. And this is just plain stupid. You know? If I hadn't already blocked all the morons in this neck of the woods, I probably could post on Facebook, XBB 1.5 is making the rounds, everything's going to suck, and get a bunch of people ha-haing in the comments. But hey, there's also plenty of that crap on Twitter, especially since Elon Musk stopped the enforcement of the COVID misinformation policy over there. So yeah, 2023, what a wonderful year we're gonna start with. First thing, we get a nasty ass reminder of the pandemic having never been over. Hashtag COVID is not over. Another year of this crap. Because people are too stupid to learn. Well, to the smart ones who watch this and heed it, I wish you the best of luck. Myself, I'd love to not get my ass kicked by COVID a second time. I would have liked to have not gotten my ass kicked the first time. But democracy does not mean the stupidity deserves a seat at the table. It's pathetic. XBB 1.5, take it seriously. Now let's see how far this piece of crap goes. I got some videos to finish up before the ball drops. 7:49 at the Geek House. Keep your head on straight. And let's watch the CDC actually try to somewhat start doing their job again. XBB 1.5, take it seriously. This is the one to get paranoid about. I was worried that someday we'd come across something that would kick our ass with no mitigations and the public having been lulled to sleep. Here we are. Not trying to outding Dr. Ding. But this one I think is worth being paranoid about. XBB 1.5, take it seriously. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.